Well, welcome to this month's meeting. This is a joint webcast between FBI Apps, Pastino Brothers, Inc., and MAD Tampa, or Mobile Application Dev Group. And we're going to talk about today is an intro to Azure for devs, and kind of keep the focus on developers, what they might be interested in. We are the Pastino Brothers who build powerful apps for the stars. See our new branding there with FBI Apps, kind of catchy. Hopefully you can remember FBI. A little bit easier than Pastino Brothers, so that's the idea. And in case you are having trouble with audio, this is our phone. You can call at and enter that code, 679-256-129. Also, check the chat window for messages. I'm going to post one there shortly, so make sure you bring that up. And if you have any questions along the way, feel free to use the chat window as well. And if you're not talking, please put your your phone on mute. And we'll go ahead and get going here then. Pastino Brothers and In Business Links Network are in many different places available to you through, we have meetups out there, or we're on Eventbrite. Post our meetings through MailChimp, as well as we have Facebook and Twitter and Google Plus pages. And we are using Start Meeting here today to broadcast our webcast. And we have three brothers here. I'd like to do a brief intro for all of us. I'm a programmer and MVP. Gary does graphics and marketing business dev. And Richard's our musician and content leader. And I'll let these guys take their turns and tell you a little bit more about themselves. So Gary, go ahead and start.
Okay, this is Gary Pastino. I'm the middle brother of the Pastino brothers. Until recently, we didn't have other Pastino brothers. Now we have grandchildren, which are Pastino brothers as well. My experiences are with local networking groups, ambassadors for a couple of chambers, and I won a Good Burger Award nominee. I was a nominee for a Good Burger, as you see my picture there, which is basically a good citizen of St. Petersburg, Florida. And I run the In Business Links Network organization and e-services director for the Bluffs Business Association out here in the Clearwater area. We put together a newsletter called Tips and Bits, and you'll see that in a minute. And what that does is give up-to-the-minute information from subject experts, and it comes out 5 days a week, Sunday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. It's an automated newsletter. It gives you an idea of what a free white paper could look like. This is no cost to us. We pick the sources, although, and we streamline it so that it becomes very content-oriented. And this kind of helps us in between our quarterly meetups, so that it gives the current information out there to our user group. So thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy that newsletter and our meetups, and the link will be in the resources.
Hey, robotic ping pong, look at that. That's pretty cool, huh?
Yeah, isn't that something? There's a couple.
Maybe they'll robotic beer pong pretty soon. That'd be interesting.
Right, and there's something on taxes, internet taxes in there. There's an article about that. So yeah, it really pulls in a lot of sources, and something that's very relevant. And of course, if there's something you want to see, just let us know as well, and I could probably pull in that source as well.
Great job on that, Gary. Rich, go ahead and introduce yourself. Take your phone off of mute because we can't hear you.
All right, I'm Rich Vestido. I'm the musician in the family. I teach at Matt's Music. Been there for 52 years. I write songs in my spare time. I have over 475 songs, and I come up with some pretty good app ideas. I work on the Jethro Tull newsletter monthly, and I use Chrome to do that. It's easier to work with that, to work with your headlines and stuff. Jethro Tull is starting his 40th anniversary tour, 50th anniversary tour, I should say. And he's got so many great songs, and we have our app has all the current albums, 75 albums plus. There's articles about the Beatles, and it's a real fun newsletter. We have videos in it, and pictures, and Ringo Starr is supposed to get a knighthood. So that's it for me, Rich Vestido.
All right, Rich, thanks. And notice the difference here between those two newsletters. Gary's Tips and Bites.
I know.
We had a URL that's not, a custom URL. This is a free URL by paper.li. We did a few seminars by that in the past. And on the Tull newsletter, we have a registration capability so you can build up a news email list as well as a custom URL. And then myself, I am the third brother, the youngest one, and former Microsoft employee, Microsoft MVP, and help out with the mobile app dev Tampa user group. And the newsletter I'll show you here is the news.pastinobrothers.com, and this is a software newsletter. Welcome, Sager. And then also you can see right here I've got, what's new in the software industry will be reported here, because this is what's happening in the software industry as reported by over 400 influentials in the industry. So I've got a lot of great news feeds for this. You can see everything from PHP in the news here today to SharePoint by Andrew O'Connell. You've got Shane Boyer out of Orlando, now works for Microsoft. He's got an article there, Microsoft Curls, and you've got Amber Osborne, former Tampa resident, got an article in here as well. And then a lot of great news feeds as well for this particular newsletter. So hopefully you just go ahead and register for that, and you'll also get that delivered right to your mailbox. This is a daily newsletter, so a lot of great stuff. It's a good read.
There's even a shameless plug there in the right bottom corner for today's event.
Yeah, right there. You see the Twitter feed right there. We got that tweet a little while ago. Okay, let's get back in and get back over to the deck. I'm going to put a question out to all the attendees. What is your experience with Azure? New, some, or lots, or some other variation? But if you can please answer that, that'd be great. And I'm going to go back to the deck now and start the session here. They did mention, my brothers, we wrote the Jethro Tull app. And we have also a copyright we just got on that as well. So there's a screenshot of our app, and we've got a new version up there with lots of enhancements. We use the Sync Fusion grid control now in there, so you have a really nice grid view layout of our lists and lots of enhancements. All right, so we're going to save this here for the end, but have everybody introduce themselves. And we'll go around and do kind of a little social thing at the end. And then we've got our actual presentation. So let's get into Intro to Azure for Devs. Now, about a year ago, I really started doing a deep dive into Azure, and these are a lot of the questions I had when I first got started with it. What is this free account thing, and how can I get monthly usage credits? What are the options I have available to me there? You got your Azure Portal, getting used to that. How do I know how much money I'm spending with billing and usage? A lot of different things here. So in this particular webcast, we're going to take our first look at taking your first steps into working with Azure. We'll look at how to get a free $200 a day credit, as well as various options on monthly usage. And you'll learn how to monitor your billing and usage and how to create virtual machines, ASP.NET web services, and deploy from GitHub and Visual Studio. We'll also look at deployment models and resource groups, as well as the Azure command line interface and how to create a SQL database with scalability. We'll also talk about growing your solutions and how to find useful resources. On Azure.com around support architectures and how to delete resources. All right, so it looks like we have a kind of a split on the experience level. We got some experience, we got no experience, and one attendee there, Sugar, just got asked to go ahead and start working on an Azure project, so this is very timely for you. So the first thing I want to point out here is Dev Essentials, visualstudio.com. If you have not signed up here, this is a great site to start out. You can see there is a box right down there for a free Azure account, $200 credit. There are other ways to get to a $200 credit. I think if you just go out there, azure.com, you'll be able to get one from there. But this site here also has a lot of free downloads and a lot of goodies on it. So I always recommend going here first. As far as monthly credits go, you have a few different options now. That Dev Essential used to offer a $25 credit. That's no longer there per month. I don't know if they'll bring that back. I hope they do. That would be nice. But these are the other options that we have. If you have an MSDN subscription, at work or yourself, like I myself have one through the MVP program at Microsoft. So if you have the professional subscription, you get $50 per month, and Visual Studio Enterprise Edition at $150 per month. Also, if you are a Microsoft partner, like we are a partner, and you purchase the Action Pack, which is about $450, you will get a $100 a month Azure credit as well. So there's the link for more information on that. And then finally, if you're a new startup, you might want to take advantage of the BizSpark program at bizspark.microsoft.com. And as doing such, you will also receive $150 per month Azure credit for up to 5 developers. So those are all the ones I was able to come up with. There might be some more out there. If anybody here in attendance knows of another free credit, feel free to chime in on the chat window. I'll make sure I share that with everybody. Let's go ahead and take a look at the rest of the time here with a demo. We're going to do one big demo now, go out to the portal. So let's go take a look at our dashboard. So it's portal.azure.com. Let's take a look first at these buttons here in the upper right. You've got a nice help and support button right off the bat. If you got questions, you can go ahead and create a new support request, and it creates a new blade here where you can just type in and choose the issues, the problem, and contact info. And you can go ahead and set that up very, very easily. Also on this pull down is a keyboard shortcuts. Very nice and useful for navigating through the dashboard. So you might want to print that off if you're just getting started and have that handy next to you until you get used to the portal. Also, you have this little smiley face. Send us your feedback. Microsoft loves to receive feedback. So if you have a good idea on something, how it should be working, or if something's not quite working right, or you have a better way of maybe accomplishing it, go ahead and tell them about your experience. They do listen, and they do incorporate so many changes so frequently in Azure. So that's one thing I really love about it, is that it's always being improved, almost on a daily or weekly basis for sure. Then you get to portal settings. So this you can specify what kind of background you want, what kind of theme you would like. Also, you have ability to specify what what language you want to work in. This is a little Bash-in IDE, so you can actually type in Bash and Windows PowerShell commands right down below, which is very, very handy. And then also, the last thing here we'll show you here are your notifications. If you look down at the bottom, it tells you how much remaining credit I have out of the $200 free trial. Also, any deployment statuses are popped up here with a nice go-to resource, or you can pin it to your dashboard as well in that spot. So let's go back out to the Azure Portal once again and take a look at this left pane. These are all groupings of your various resources. For example, if I want to take a look at all my app services, I would click on that, and you can see I've got a few that I've defined. Look at all my virtual machines, I would click on that and see all my VMs that I have available to me. Come down over here under more services. This lists everything that's out there. So if you wanted to have a favorite as a Machine Learning Studio, for example, which is very cool, by the way, you can hit the little star. Now that'll become a favorite, and then it'll appear on your list, on your dashboard list. And then you can continue to modify that any way you want by unstarring things as well. All right, so that's kind of a quick tour of your dashboard, and then let's go ahead and start out with taking a look at your billing and usage, because that is always very important. So the way you kind of keep tabs on this is you go down to the Subscriptions tab, and you click on the various subscription that you have in question. And you can see right there from the ID I have about $12 used, and the rest is available. And you can see where that money is going here. A majority of my money is going to a service plan I have. It creates the hardware that my VMs are stored on. You can also have a forecast. This tells you at your current spending rate, this is what your forecast is to spend at the end of the month. It also tells you your remaining balance. And you scroll down, it shows you exactly what the resources are that are taking up money. When you create a virtual machine, let's take a look at our VMs. And I'll bring one up here. There is an option on the virtual machine to say stop, and you won't get billed for it when it is stopped. You'll only get billed for it when it is running. So that's a little tip to save a little bit of money if you and want to utilize the same VM over and over again and not have it active when you're not active. And I'll show you a few other resource tips as we're going through some of the demos. So let's go back to the main Marketplace page here. So on the Marketplace page, you can go to New, and what will happen is a search for everything that you have out on the Azure Portal. You can see you've got a compute section, you've got a networking section, you got a storage section where you can create like a storage account, or you can do a data lake store, or web and mobile I like a lot. If you want to create a mobile application, there's a quick start in there that allows you to go through and build a database, a service, and then a client, like say in Xamarin Forms. So that's all in the mobile app quick start. Containers are available in here, Azure Container Service. You've got the Service Fabric Cluster, so all of those are in there. Let's go ahead and just do a search in the Marketplace. What we're going to do is create a VM now that has Visual Studio on it. So what you want to do is you want to create, let's go to Compute, and let's go to Visual Studio, and then go ahead and enter. Now it'll give you all the VMs that have Visual Studio pre-installed on it, which is kind of nice. There is a Windows 10 Enterprise, but that is only available on the MSDN subscription. The free subscription, you would have to use this Windows Server. So let's go ahead and create this. We'll show you how to do this, and it's going to create with pre-installed the Visual Studio Community Edition. So let's go ahead and create our name here, Mad Tampa. Let's go ahead and create an SSD. Let's do our demo user to log in with. Let's put our password and repeat it. And then you have fat fingered that one. No. Okay, that's checked. There's our trial, our subscription we're going to use. If you had multiple subscriptions, there's a pull down. I'm going to create a new resource group, and let's talk about resource groups, what this is. Basically, you can define any business scenario where you want to kind of clump things together in one category. And what this is going to do, when I create this VM, you'll see not only the VM itself gets created, but many other resources as well get created. And if you were to go to delete that, you'd have to know all those resources individually to go ahead and delete that. So our business scenario here today is we want to delete everything when we're done with learning this so we don't keep getting billed, right, for it. So I'm going to go ahead and say, okay, we're going to call this thing a resource group here, Mad Tampa RG. And this is your location. So you want to pick a location that's closest to you, wherever you reside. I'm down in sunny Tampa, Florida, so I'll go ahead with the East U.S. And then you have to choose your virtual machine. So now I'll give you an option, and it's going to load the pricing up. And this is the monthly pricing estimate as well. So you kind of get a feel for your hardware right up front, how much this is going to cost. This particular machine's got 2 CPUs, 7 gigabytes, 8 data disks. You can see the IOPS as well as the local SSD has got 100 gigabytes. So it's not a bad machine, but it's a couple $100 a month. You want to shop around for something a little bit better, and actually with the Azure free subscription, I think what you want to do is probably get with a machine maybe with 1 CPU. So maybe this standard one here, this DSVS1 standard at half the price, $104 might be a good one to pick. So let's go ahead and go with that, and we'll select it, come over to Next Blade, which will be the settings and configuration features. And this one here is going to have your virtual network, subnet, public IP. So again, these are all the resources that are going to be created when this VM gets created. And our storage. I'm going to accept all the defaults, then go ahead and click on Create. And this is going to go ahead and create, and this is going to deploy and take about 10 minutes. Now, I've actually created one prior to this. So let's go and take a look at my virtual machines that I have here. And I'm going to go bring up this Mad Tampa one, and you can see right here I've got the virtual machine, and I can say I'm going to connect to this virtual machine. And now it's going to download this RDP file. And you just say open it, and this will come up, and you will connect, and now you got the password. Now instead of Russ Pastino, you set up a demo user on this, right? So I'm going to use a different account. I'm going to put in demo user, and I'm going to use in demo at, yeah, that's 1, 2, 3 is what I put in, and log in with that. So now this is actually going to create a real PC in a VM, right? And when I first started looking at Azure, my brothers asked the same questions, you know, compare this to like OneDrive, right? Well, OneDrive is just a store, right, a data store. You can create photos up there, documents. It's really just a document share. Azure is so much more. You have virtual machines here. I'm actually got a real laptop, right, that is booting up right now, and going to be able to configure here. I think I've got another one running here too. Let me just bring that up. It's already started up. Over here. So this is what it will look like when you get done running, right? You've got this local server will pop up, and you want to change one setting here. You want to turn off this enhanced IE security if you're running a server, because it just will nag you to death every time you navigate to a URL. So I like to get that one set up. And then notice right here you got Visual Studio pre-installed. So within about 10 minutes, you've got a VM installed with Visual Studio. Now, it takes me longer to walk down the aisle in Best Buy, let alone, you know, having all this stuff already done for you. And Visual Studio installs take a while, too. It's gotten better with VS2 2017, but it's nice to know you get something so quick. So now you got kind of a dev machine right here. One side note, anybody doing Xamarin development, to me, this is still not a viable option to do it in a VM because, number one, the Windows Server VM does not facilitate doing UWP development or Universal Windows development. You only can do that from a Windows 10 machine, last time I checked. And then even if you have a Windows 10 machine, the emulators do not run on there. The Android emulator, and you would have to connect to a Mac on your network, and this is actually on Azure's network. So you would kind of be out of luck there. Unless there's a way to configure that, you can just type it in, let me know. But I have not invested too much time there because it just seemed like too much of a hassle. So I do Xamarin development from the metal. If you're doing web development, on the other hand, this would be a great solution, right, to go ahead and do that. So there we have it. We've got that running and going, and so that's our kind of pitch on virtual machines. You can also create virtual machines for Linux, Ubuntu, all sorts of different platforms, Red Hat. These are all doable. Any questions at this point about VMs? Okay. We'll come back to it if you do. Feel free to type away in the chat box or speak up at any time. All right, so let's take a look at next web apps in Azure and ASP.NET. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to go ahead and create a brand new project here. And inside of Visual Studio, I'm going to create a new web project. And I am going to just create a new solution here. Let's go to call this Mad Tampa 2, or Mad Tampa by itself. Okay. And I'll go ahead and click Create, and then we're going to create MVC here is going to be our type. So after this gets done, I'll go ahead and do that. So Gary just asked me a question. Is this available for Mac Visual Studio? I do not believe Mac machines are an option in the virtual machines. I believe those also have to be done on a real device. Let me go ahead and see here under the compute section. Let's see if we do see a Mac. I would doubt it. Compute. Let's do a feature on Mac, MAC. Don't see it. Yep. No, you don't. But you can access Azure through Visual Studio for the Mac, like I'm doing right now in this. I'm going to go ahead and rebuild this, and then I'm going to go ahead and publish this. And this is a nice step-by-step approach to get your website hosted. So if I were to run this, you get the standard, ASP.NET blank template page. We'll actually see that when I go to publish it. So I'm going to hit the publish. We're going to say publish to Microsoft Azure App Service. And in Visual Studio 2017, this is all baked right in. In 15, you'd have to install the Azure SDK to get this functionality. I'm going to go ahead and do a new resource group. Call this Mad Tampa RG. And then this is going to be my, I'm going to create a new plan. This is your hardware, right? That's going to be serving up the website. And let's call this let's call this plan. And you can specify what kind of machine you want, and it gives you the different sizes, and then you can scale up or back accordingly. So now this is going to go ahead and deploy. You notice I've got my login URL ID up here is Russ at Pastino Brothers, and there is another login up here. You want to make sure these are set to your Azure free account to get this Azure integration. That's how it knew I had a free trial, because it pulled that up through my login credentials inside of Visual Studio. So this is going to take a little bit. I've already got one done up there, so let's go ahead and take a look at this. It'll probably take 4 or 5 minutes to get that done. And let's hop back over to the portal, and I'm going to take a look at my one I created recently here. I've got this web application. And actually, let's take a look at the one I got here. So I got this one I used a little bit. So here is my web app. So this is what it looks like after you deployed it. And then we have the statistics, right? So you got some usage statistics, data in, data out, average response time. Here's the actual website, and then you can go ahead and customize that if you wanted to later for your own URL. And then here is the actual website that is running, right? So it's going to bring up that MVC ASP.NET webpage. And once this comes up, then you can navigate through the various pieces of it. I think I've got it right over here. And you can just do home, about, contact, and these are all different things you can do with this particular app. And then you'll see all the statistics, running in here for that as well. If you take a look at deployment options here, you can actually go out to GitHub and do a deployment right from GitHub. So you can say choose the source. Let's go out to GitHub, and then you can just click on and specify the URL that you want to paste into GitHub over on the action settings right here. So you'd have to authorize it, access your GitHub account, and then I'd log in and access my GitHub account, and then go ahead and paste in the URL, and then your deployment would happen through GitHub. So that's a pretty cool way of doing your deployment. Also, on these websites, you also have scale up and scale out, right? So scale up just means give me a bigger machine. Scale out gives me more machines in my farm, and it gives you all the different options here. And the scaling up is near no downtime whatsoever. Scale out might be a little bit of a hit, but it's not too bad. And then finally, you get into areas where you can have deployment slots. Now, this is very useful if you have a test and a QA and a production, so you can deploy to, say, test, and then you can swap it right here on the portal. So a lot of really well thought out things here in the portal for doing ASP.NET. Any questions before I move on to the next section here?
Nope.
Okay, great. So let's continue. I just want to show you one quick slide here on the PowerShell command. So if you download the PowerShell tools, and I'll show you where to do that in a minute, you can type in like these type of commands. Here's your login you can see first there. Then you get your subscription. Then you change the subname with your subscription name. We'll have a link to this deck too at the end. new resource group, right? That's where you create your location, the service plan, and then the web app. So these are all things you saw me go through graphically right through the Visual Studio IDE, but you could do these all through the PowerShell, or you can do them through the Azure command line interface. So very nice stuff there and giving you different flexibility. So next up is SQL Database. So let's go ahead and create a SQL Database so you can see how this is done through the portal. So let's go and do a new, let's go to Databases, and let's go ahead and click on SQL Database. So let's do a MAD, Tampa, let's do our DB, and let's create a new resource here. Tampa, DBRG. And here you have an option to keep a blank database, or you can preload it with AdventureWorks. So let's go ahead and do that. And then you have the configuration settings. We'll just keep the same server we just created for our server. And I guess it wants me to use an existing, new configure settings. We're going to do a new one there. We'll do a new one for this server. Let's call it SRV, and then log in. Same thing down here. And then our location. And go ahead and hit OK. So now we've got our server. You can have multiple databases per server. And then you can see here we've got our pricing for our DTUs. I'm going to go, our DTU is basically a combination of power, various measurements, IOs, IOPS, storage, SSD or hard drive. All that stuff is in there. You can go down to the lowest level, for example, 10 to 3,000 DTUs with 250 megabytes of storage. It's not bad. $15 a month. That's a pretty good buy. So let's go ahead and apply that. And I think I saw a special lately come through in my email about free database. So I have to check into that one as well. And we'll go ahead and do a create. So while this is getting created, I've already wired up this in Visual Studio. So if I go back over to Visual Studio, I can actually see and query the database. So if I go out to my Server Explorer, you can see I've got my subscription to Azure. I can go ahead and expand on this. I can see the databases expand. And then I can go ahead and say, okay, here's the one I created here for database. You can go ahead and do a refresh. It'll come down and give you your new database. It would show there after it deploys. I did this one here, so we'll go ahead and open this up in Server Explorer. So this will bring it up over here in the window on the right. You can go ahead and put in your credentials and log into your database that you created, and now it'll go ahead and bring it up right here in Server Explorer. Similarly, you can go ahead and use the SQL Server Management Studio in the same way. So here I have that, and then you just connect to that particular URL is where the database is, and then you can see over here I did a select top 1,000 rows, and here's all the data down below. All right, so that's that part of it. And then let's show you the, Gary, I'm not sure what you mean by that, the contact web page. And what I'll do here is I'm going to wrap this up with some resources that are, go ahead, Gary.
Yeah, on the website that it was built, there was also a contact page that was part of the initial. And I thought it would be nice to show what kind of reporting is done from that contact page, the data collection that's done, and possibly how that could be used.
Right. So this just gives you a template, is what it's doing. What I'm looking at right here, this page, are you talking about?
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Looks like you need a form there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the standard page that it creates a 3-page tab page website.
Okay, so then you got to build a form. Yeah.
Right, then you would have to build, like it gives you a support at example.com. You change that to your URL in the code as well as this one here. And that's how that would work. So yeah, it's pretty nice, this ASP.NET template, right, for building those pages. So good.
Okay,
thanks.
great, thank you.
All right, now let's go out to the last piece to this, and this is actually Azure.Microsoft.com. If you scroll down the page, first of all, it shows you all the regions, and there's over 42 more than any cloud provider. They even have a couple down in Africa, which recently was announced, and these are coming soon, which they said was impossible to do, and now it looks like we're going to have something there, which is very, very cool. And so there's a lot out there, and you can see all the different statistics associated with this. On the bottom of this page, there is a very important one, downloads. And in downloads, if for some reason you have to work with Visual Studio 2015, there's a link to download the .NET SDK for Visual Studio 2015. Also, there's a SDK for the Fabric for 2017, the Service Fabric. Also, you take a look down here. This is where you have your command line tools for Windows install, for PowerShell, as well as a command line interface. And there's a nice storage emulator too for Azure that you can look at. So great page you get started with products. You take a look at the products and look at solutions. Solutions is very interesting. So if you want to take a look at, for example, a mobile solution, this gives you an architectural diagram here at the bottom that kind of describes how this is made up. And a lot of the things we talked about are in here. You got your SQL database, so this is actually hosted in Azure. All right. Unlike taking a VM and installing SQL Azure on the SQL on the VM, right? That might be a common use for a SQL database, but there you are owning the SQL database and the scalability and everything else that's associated with that. Whereas if you do it the way I showed you, you're creating SQL in the cloud, and that has all those features I showed you, the deployment slots, the ability to scale up, scale out, the ability to deploy to from GitHub. All those things are built into what's called the Solutions as a Service, or SaaS, right, is the acronym for that. And then you have the app service in the middle, which you can serve up data. You can use application insights to monitor the statistics and usage of your application. Here we're going to use blob storage. You have an offline synchronization between the tablet and the data store. And we're using Hockey app, which has now been migrated to, or the new thing to use is App Center for that. And then you have a continuous integration system there in place as well. So that's a nice kind of solution architect if you're ever looking for various solutions. On the products, you can see all the products like we looked at in the actual portal. Documentation is great. Docs.Microsoft.com is fantastic, and you can really get a lot of good getting started type scenarios there as well. Pricing, if you're looking at pricing calculators, these are all available through this part of the site, and you can see the different, there is a pricing calculator here, a total cost of ownership calculator. These are great ways to kind of figure out, estimates in terms of how much things are going to cost you. Marketplace is wonderful. This is where you have all the different partners that are featured with all the different products that are available out there. Machine learning, for example, I think there's one out there for NexusSys. They have a great API you can use with theirs. You got partner blogs. The Azure blog is very informational. A lot of good things going on here. New offers, always up there in, they just announced here in December. So you also have a lot of resources that you can utilize here. White papers, code samples is great. Brings you right out to do a nice little search. Like, for example, you wanted to find this HTML sample right here. And you can click on it and say, okay, let's browse to GitHub. And then now you've got your URL right here. You can copy that out, and then you can put that into the deployment piece to your website, right, that we looked at for GitHub deployment. and that would be your deployment options like we started looking at here with GitHub, and then you can go ahead and click on the GitHub option and then paste that URL in there. So lots of cool things there. And then finally on that, let's take a look at the last piece, which was the support. And under support, you can see that you've got Azure support. You can compare the support plans. You can see what's included under developer support, professional, direct, standard, premier. These are all described right out there. So lots of resources, and what I'm going to do is wrap this up with a summary slide and show you a few links where you can download things to and from. Let's go ahead and do that. Go ahead and bring this up here. And one other announcement here, I am actually writing a book on Xamarin Forms in Azure. I'm pretty close to completing it. I'm looking for a reviewer. So if you know of anybody that might be experienced in Azure as well as Xamarin Forms, I think the rate that A-Press is going to pay for that would be $2 per page. So far I've got about 130 pages written, probably another 100 or so to write on top of that for all the chapters. You will get a name mentioned in the book for helping out and reviewing it, and contact me at russ@festinobrothers.com, and I need this reviewer pretty quickly, so just let me know on that one. Also, what we saw here, we talked about your free trials and what you can do to explore the platform. We use the Azure Portal to create and manage resources. We created virtual machines, web apps, a SQL database, talked about basic concepts such as resource groups, DTUs, and more. And then we deployed a web app from Visual Studio. We saw the tools and integration we have for Azure right inside the IDE. We used scripting tools, and I showed you on the deck here what the PowerShell looked like. They're very similar for the Azure CLI to automate such tasks as creating new web app so we can deploy to it from GitHub as well. We also talked about growing your solutions and how to find useful resources in Azure.com around the support, architectures, and more, and how to learn how to delete resources. And so the resources we have here, we got our 3 newsletters up on top that we showed you. There's the Dev Essentials link, the portal, Azure.com itself. These are the links to the partner sites for the Action Pack as well as BizSpark. Also, these are our links for the Pastino Brothers with our website, festinobrothers.com. We're up on Facebook. And then this is the link. Where did the link go that we had for the, I thought I put that, oh, there it is, right there. Get the deck right here. That was it. At the inbusiness.seo.net, and Gary will have that published in probably a few days, I think, right, Gary? Along with the recording?
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So that's where you would want to go to get this deck. Any questions before we part ways here? And open mic, if you guys want to introduce yourself. We got Sonny and Sager online.
You might as well stop the recording.